Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast. My name is Amir. Before I get into today's episode, just want to thank everybody for following the podcast on Spotify. Also want to thank everybody for subscribing on YouTube. So if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So for today's episode, I want to talk about Donovan Mitchell and how he just signed his extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Donovan Mitchell agreed on a contract extension with the Cavs today, and that means the Miami Heat's top prize of this offseason and top trade target is now off market. Mitchell has agreed to sign a 3-year extension for $150.3 million, which includes a player option for the 2027-2028 season. So guaranteed to make at least $100 million. I don't know what the breakdown is of that 150, but assuming if it is 50 each year, he's going to be guaranteed 2 years, and then he's going to be able to reassess in 2 years when he's age, I think 29 or close to 30, to see where he can go next, or if he's willing to re-sign with the Cavs, which I'm going to assume he's going to be leaving the Cavaliers ultimately and eventually, which makes this situation hard for the Miami Heat because he's going to be wasting a few years of his prime with the Cavaliers right now because we know they're not going to be able to necessarily compete with the top Eastern teams as well as the Western young teams who are now up and coming. So super frustrating, but Woj mentioned that he signed this today. Again, the Miami Heat were very interested in Donovan Mitchell. We've been linked to him multiple times, but we've struck out multiple times. This time, is not as bad as previous situations where we didn't have the capital or the assets to actually acquire him when he ultimately was traded from the Utah Jazz to the Cavs. This time, he simply chose to stay with his team. So there's nothing the Miami Heat can do about that. This was out of the Miami Heat's control. But with Mitchell off the board right now, the Miami Heat need to pivot. And it is a desperate situation, I would say. So, as Ira Winderman and other folks, Wes Goldberg, have said, the Knicks have obviously gotten better adding Mikal Bridges, even though they paid a hefty price, but they improved their roster, obviously. And they're a good team. They were second place in the East last season, and now they've added a really good fringe all-star type player and a really good defender. They're going to have a really good defensive team. The Boston Celtics just won a championship, and obviously they're a very good team. Number one in offense of rating last year, number two in defense. They had an easy run to the finals, but they still were the most dominant team in the regular season, and that translated to the playoffs as well, even though they had an unchallenging road to get there. But I mean, Drew Holiday and Derek White are effectively their role players. I mean, they got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis, if you want to call them the big three. And then to round out their roster, they have two of the best defensive guards in the NBA who are obviously very good offensively as well. So they're going to be obviously the team to beat, the contender next year. And then, of course, the Sixers signed Paul George through free agency. So they've obviously improved. They re-signed Maxey to a max contract. And then, of course, now they're rounding out their rest of their team with solid vets. And then re-signing Kelly Oubre was a great move. And adding Eric Gordon as a veteran shooter off the bench. And then adding Andre Drummond, who could be a double-double machine. Good moves for them. Like those are the top three teams in the East. And the Miami Heat have to compete now against the Pacers, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, who re-signed Pascal Siakam, and they have a up-and-coming player in Halliburton, Mathurin, and some other pieces. So, they should be ahead of the Miami Heat. So should the Cavs now after re-signing Donovan Mitchell. So, all the Miami Heat have done so far is re-sign Kevin Love and Drew Smith to a two-way deal, which is underwhelming to say the least so far. But we also know that the Miami Heat weren't going to do anything in free agency anyway because they have no money. Unless it was through a sign and trade, the Miami Heat, who are basically a first apron team, might be a first apron team. I'm assuming they probably will. Right now, they're not because of Thomas Bryant opting out of his contract, Caleb Martin opting out of his contract. that's the reason why the Heat right now are below that, because we only have 13. We have 13 folks on our roster right now, maybe 12, depends on what we do with the Orlando Robinson standard contract. We could extend that, which I think the deadline is coming up in a few weeks, of whether or not we want to pick up that option. So it's a club option to keep that contract standard. So we have, I think, 12 players on the team right now. So we're waiting on Haywood Highsmith, who is a free agent, who most likely will be gone too. But knowing the Miami Heat, they're probably just going to re-sign him, and we're gonna run it back. So not the favorite words of Miami Heat Nation. Um, this build is going into year 6, I believe, and there was a report by someone I saw saying that the Heat front office, likes this team. They think if they're healthy, they can compete, which I do like this team. I believe they have a puncher's chance if they're healthy, which is a big if, and they're never healthy, so that's not going to happen. Not being pessimistic, but Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero are never healthy, and other players are going to get banged up throughout the year. It's just the nature of the NBA. It happens, and so we've also somehow just been super unlucky with that in the regular season and especially in the postseason with our injury history. So can't expect them to be fully healthy. So if we're not fully healthy, we're back to a play-in team. Like again, the Knicks are better than us, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Pacers, the Magic even added KCP and they won the division last year. So they were a better team on paper, technically, or not on paper, but based on record. And they're a young and improving team and one of the top defenses in the NBA. And they added another defensive minded player, KCP, and he's a 2-time NBA champion. So all the teams around us are getting better. It's not to say that the Heat are going to do absolutely nothing this offseason. We have plenty of summer left for us to make moves. And again, it's going to come through the trade market, but the biggest whale is off the market. And DeJounte Murray is off the market again, another player that, was tied to the Miami Heat that could have helped this Miami Heat team. So the Miami Heat can stay and run it back essentially with adding like maybe one veteran, maybe like a Dennis Smith Jr. or Torian Prince type of player to round out the roster and then fill the rest with two-way players. Um, and we have the rookies that we just, the undrafteds that we added to our two-way contract. So maybe we could build up then. But if we don't make a move for a Zach Levine, or like a Brandon Ingram or a Lowry Markkinen, then the Miami Heat are going to be in trouble. They're going to be a seventh seed, eighth seed, ninth seed, or 10th seed, basically a play-in team once again, because again, I can't expect this Miami Heat team to ever be fully healthy. It's a wish. I hope that happens, and I have faith in this team. And I go back and forth. Like I do love this roster. I love Jaime and Jovic, and I love Jimmy, obviously, and Bam, and then Terry Rozier, and then if Tyler can come off the bench with Duncan Robinson, I mean, we have some depth there. But again, it's going to be hard to contend unless there's major injuries in the East, unless we stay fully healthy, and unless we add another piece to replace Haywood and Caleb, and a backup point guard. We have Drew Smith now, I guess, as our backup point guard. So we have Drew Smith, Tyler, and Terry as our three, guards. Add in Duncan to that mix, who has a back injury that we don't know if he's going to be healthy next season. That's not going to be good enough, I think, in this Eastern Conference. And you see what the teams in the West are doing. So getting through the gauntlet now of Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, you have to get through if you can somehow make it to the finals, which won't happen for the Miami Heat next year. You have to get through an OKC team who's now adding Caruso, who's a All NBA defensive type of player. They've added Harkenstein, another really good rebounding center behind Chet. So they're adding depth. The T Wolves with their draft, getting was it Dillingham, I believe, now have some added youth and depth to help Anthony Carl Anthony Towns and Anthony Davis or Anthony Edwards, excuse me, Jesus Christ, Davis. So they're getting better. And then who else am I missing? I mean, obviously Denver's still there. That they're going to be in the mix too. Um, the Lakers are going to make moves as we're going to see. So there are going to be teams in the West that are going to be competing. I mean, Memphis is going to have John Morant back, and I mean, They were a number one seed 2 seasons ago before John Morant got through his legal issues and all these injuries. So that can be an interesting team, seeing John Morant play fully healthy with Triple J, Desmond Bain, and Marcus Smart, and then adding Zach Edey. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next season? This is all frustrating, guys, but we know there's still plenty of offseason left, and the Miami Heat have to make a trade. In my opinion, you have to get one of the three again, or maybe even four. I don't think it's likely, but you have Trey Young. You have to take a stab at that now. You have to invest in that as a possible avenue. Um, Trey Young, but it seems unlikely. I don't know how big of a fire sale the Hawks are going to have. Then you have Lowry Markkinen again. That might be a steep price because Danny Ainge, tough negotiator, has been saying he doesn't want to trade him. There's been a lot of speculation whether they're going to move him or not. And then of course there's Brandon Ingram and Zach LaVine. Brandon Ingram, I don't know if they're going to keep him now based on getting Dejounte Murray, but it seemed like he played his last game in a Pelicans uniform last season. And so he's more likely to be moved of the guys I mentioned before. Same as Zach LaVine, it seems like they're just trying to get rid of him because of his injury history and his contract. But if the Bulls are attaching a first round pick to the Zach LaVine deal, I think the Miami Heat, if they want to stay competitive in the East, after all the moves these other teams around them have been making, they might have to explore that option and trading a Tyler Hero, perhaps, who has one extra year on his contract versus Levine. He has 3 years. So you would get rid of Tyler Hero. You would have to probably throw in a Duncan Robinson to make that work. I mean, you throw those two in, you lose a lot of shooting, but you get Zach LaVine, who is a good 3 point shooter, a good 3 level scorer, someone who's capable of scoring 25 points if healthy. That's the big issue, is his health. But he's still under 29, or I think he's 28, 29 years old. So he's under 30, as I was going to say. Um, and if you get a first round pick, then that means the Heat will have 3 picks. Zach LaVine, perhaps Jimmy and him could ball out next season. It's a contract year for Jimmy. Um, who knows? We could reassess after that. But if it doesn't work out, we can have Levine on the books for 2 years and then trade him as an expiring contract to recoup possibly some assets. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think you got to take a flyer on the two likelier options is Ingram or Zach LaVine. I think we have to make those types of moves if we want to be able to compete. Otherwise, it's going to be a frustrating season where we run it back, probably re-sign just Haywood, add in like a Dennis Smith Jr. or some minimum guy, and hope that Jimmy Butler can be healthy. Hope that Tyler can stay healthy. Hope that Terry Rozier, Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam could fit in your starting lineup. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Super frustrating that Donovan Mitchell's off the table, but it's not the same as Donovan Mitchell, or excuse me, as Damian Lillard last season. Um, that was gut wrenching and heartbreaking once he's got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. So because we all but thought we were going to get Dame 100% last season. So it was never 100% that Donovan was going to opt out. So now we understand his mindset. He's going to test it out again with the Cavs. Unfortunate for the Heat, but we still have plenty of offseason, Heat Nation, and I'm desperately hoping we make some sort of move. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a good one.